in terms of new business models or new customer propositions, what do you think will start to emerge as the ecosystem matures? Chris, do you want to start with that?
I mean, I think that there are a number of very interesting opportunities. The kind of core model of open banking, as we all know, there's the kind of access to data and then initiation of payments, and those are the kind of prime high-level use cases at the moment. But the access to data under PSD2 is limited to certain data sets, so there are commercial opportunities for banks to provide additional data. Identity attributes being a kind of key one, and there's quite a lot of active talk about that at the moment. I don't know whether it's that in itself could create a significant additional benefit over and above the business models that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, if you think primarily at the moment, we're seeing business accounting, wealth management, financial management packages. We're seeing lending being a big business case at the moment, but all of these are largely based on the data sets that exist at the moment. I think where this gets really interesting is when you start to blend identity data with payment initiation, and that provides a really good opportunity for new business models to emerge. I also think that something that we've been looking at it's on the roadmap for developing a standard for this thing called variable recurring payments. I think that's a little bit away still, but that's where you really start to get a new proposition in place, which could be a significant step forward in terms of payment APIs. Could really start to provide a very useful alternative to some of the kind of existing payment methods. But that's not a regulatory requirement, certainly not for sort of e-commerce type payments, but it is something that's allowable under the regulations and could really provide a commercial opportunity that works for banks, works for third parties, works for merchants, and most importantly works really well for customers. And I think that's the thing that I find really exciting about a potential business model that will get all sorts of people very excited. But I think it's a little bit away yet, but that's what I believe.
Thank you. And I guess it's that move from open banking with capital O and B regulation to the more broad concept of data exchange and functionality through APIs there. Mm-hmm. Jim, did you have a view on the sorts of new customer propositions that might develop?
Yeah, strongly agree with what Chris said around the lending use case. And without kind of doing the commercial unduly, one of the reasons we've elected to acquire Finicity is because of their strengths in that space in the US. Now, the US is quite interesting. I mean, US has been doing open banking in some shape or form for much longer than we have in the UK, but without the kind of help of regulation, but also without quite the same level of robust infrastructure when it comes to things like APIs. But I mean, for example, roughly half of the US mortgage industry uses Finicity output to help with lending decisions. The sort of data they're using is, absolutely information out of current accounts, but also information from a variety of other sources, both bank accounts, so not just checking accounts, but also savings accounts and other loan accounts. And they also take data from non-banking sources as well to kind of create that more holistic picture, which helps a lender make a decision. Now, we think that's really important, not least from a financial inclusion perspective, getting past all of the traditional issues with thin credit files and so on. But it also kind of, I think, highlights one of the difficulties in the UK. And I think, I think everyone who's already spoken has kind of touched on it to some degree. The regulation and the work of the OBIE and so on has been very helpful to get us to this point. But it's a point, and we have to go beyond that. There is a clear commercial incentive to financial institutions to make available more data, in the sense that they are, when it comes to things like the lending use case, because kind of by definition, retail banks are also lenders. But it's an indirect business case. And I think what Chris was saying around the things like variable recurring payments, absolutely. I think there's that I would strongly suggest there's commercial opportunity for FIs in that space. And I think we have to kind of move past the waiting to see what happens from the regulator next. I mean, I'm a strong supporter of the move to open finance and so on. There's nothing stopping institutions making available more data through the same APIs or expanding their current sets of APIs right now. It doesn't have to wait to be kind of told what to do by whether it's FCA or or PSD3 or whatever else. So I think there's lots going on. There's lots of opportunity. I think the UK has certainly been has certainly shown the way, and certainly as far as Europe is concerned. And there's a lot of catch up still to do. We all know that payments is only just getting going, and there's a lot more that needs to be done, here and elsewhere. For example, so we're at the start of a very long journey. I think an exciting one, obviously, but and I think it kind of needs leadership from particularly from some of the larger institutions and so on, because one's going to have to make some decisions which don't have necessarily the most obvious and immediate return to move the thing forward. Otherwise, regulators will come along and tell you what to do, and I don't think that's in anyone's interest, because of not least the sort of time cycle for regulation to get created.